Good afternoon. Compared to previous times that we've met here related to weather events, I think Montgomery County has fared much better. We are trying to get back to normalcy as quickly as possible. So the first thing out of the bat is that the county government will in fact be open tomorrow. Our public schools are open tomorrow. We will resume Sunday operations of our ride-on operation for bus service, transit service today. We have a number of items to report to you. As we speak now, we're approximately 10,000 Pepco customers within the county that are without service, and that number is going down. At the height of the storm, we only had approximately 23,000. And when you compare that to previous events, you will see that that number is relatively small. And that number will continue to go down, as you can watch the board behind us. There are 56 roads in the county that are closed. Of that 56 number, 9 are state roads. There are 47 county roads that are closed, 14 due to flooding, 19 due to wires, 15 due to downed trees. Most notably of that number, Route 29 near Four Corners was closed previously. It is now reopened. Route 29 is now reopened. There are 30 signals without power. 8 of that number are priority, and we should treat those as four-way stops in the county. All of the early voting sites have power. Now, noted with that is that there will be extended hours and an extended day. Friday has been added, and the operations now will go from 8 in the morning until 9 in the evening as opposed to 6 in the evening. Repeat that, 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday as well. Because of the operation and our move toward normalcy, we'll be shutting down the EOC operation at 5 p.m. today. Our shelters, we had 3 shelters that were in operation, Mid-County, which had 16 people there, primarily due to an operation of an apartment in Silver Spring. White Oak only received 3 residents, and Boer Park 4. So we'll be closing those down to make other arrangements for those. If we cannot find shelter for the 16, we may reconsider that point, but we think we'll find additional shelter for them. 8 hospitals, all of the hospitals have power, and we had, at least at one point, Holy Cross was on a generator for part of the services. 4 small assisted living facilities have no power. That's out of a total of approximately 115. Our 311 operation, which was 24/7, received only 1,600 calls. That's indicative of the number of people without power and the lower number of challenges that we face. We've had 26 calls for operation for trees on the properties. That's down considerably as well. All of the county dams are in normal operation. County buildings all have generated power, and we anticipate full operation with those as well. As I indicated before, we have fared very well. And one of the calls, or several calls that I've received over the last few days, is whether or not we will have encouraged Halloween to be shifted a day or so. No, Halloween will go on as usual. I would ask that the parents will check just to simply make certain that in your particular neighborhood there are no immediate concerns. On a special note, I want to again thank all of our operational staff. They have been working, and what you see today is a result of the preparation that we've had from all of the personnel who've come out to work, the volunteers, as well as our professional staff. It has been an enormous undertaking. The preparation, the experience, unfortunately, we've had over the last few years due to a number of storm-related events suggested we were well prepared for this event. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Pepco. They brought in, as you can see, a fairly large array of outside of assistance. And if you'd ever had a chance to go up to the operations that they had at the fairgrounds, you've seen the mass array of trucks from other jurisdictions that were deployed here to help in this operation. So I want to thank them for their proactive movement, the operation, the communications, and all of the things that they did in preparation for this storm. We have our USAR team, which consists of approximately 80 people that were originally deployed to New Jersey that are now in New York City, assisting New York City residents there as well. So the news for us today is that we're going back to normal operation. We fared very well here in Montgomery County, especially compared to other areas. And I think it's a testament to our outstanding array of professionals and volunteers who've helped to make Montgomery County the place where we are well prepared to resolve many of these challenges. I'm now going to call the respective chiefs to come forward to give any additional information that they may want. Chief?
Police Chief Tom Manger, Montgomery County Police. As the county exec had mentioned, we have a number of intersections without power. 8 of those are what we call Priority 1 intersections. We do have police officers staffing all of those intersections. In addition to that, at last report, we had 5 roadways that were closed due to flooding. We also have police officers stationed there as well. We have other areas where we have wires down, trees down that are blocking roadways, and we're addressing those as quickly as we can. Primarily, we've dealt with traffic control and highway safety over the past couple of days, but we have had a couple of incidents. Although our calls for service at our 911 center have been less than average, a little bit lower than normal over the past couple of days, we did have a fatal crash up on 355 that we suspect was due to water in the roadway, about 3/4 of an inch of water in the roadway, and the vehicle going southbound started to hydroplane and went over into the oncoming traffic, which resulted in a fatality. In addition, on last Friday, we had 2 incidents, one in Bethesda, one in Chevy Chase, where 2 men who were posing as water authority employees knocked on the doors of elderly victims, told the homeowner that they needed to check the water pressure. One worker went with the homeowner downstairs to the basement while the other individual went upstairs and ended up stealing some jewelry. In the second case, we actually had a neighbor watch this and intervened and stopped these 2 men before they were able to commit the theft, and so we appreciate folks looking out for their neighbors. But the message I think that we need to send here is, if someone comes to your door, knocks on your door, and claims to be with the government, claims to be with some organization, before you let them in your home, make sure that they show you identification. And in fact, if you have any suspicions or any sense at all that they may be up to no good, don't let them in your home. Call the police right away, and we'll check them out. So all in all, as the county exec said, I think we fared pretty well, especially compared to some of the past storms that we've had in terms of calls for service and power outages. And we just appreciate the work that all the men and women in public safety in Montgomery County did over the last couple of days. A lot of dedicated individuals who spent many hours, some of whom didn't go home over the past couple of days, just to make sure that we had the folks out there that we needed to have to keep Montgomery County safe.
Good afternoon, Richie Bowers, County Fire Chief. As the executive said, we fared out pretty well. However, one of the things that I want to emphasize that the executive did indicate is the county government did lean forward. Public safety leaned forward quite a number of days prior to this event. Obviously, we had some predictions that were coming, but again, the leaning forward made a huge difference in our preparations. Fire rescue was pretty well hammered last night between the hours of 8 p.m. and 4 in the morning with a lot of trees on homes and wires down, even some water rescues along with police and sheriff's department we responded to. Fortunately, we had no deaths associated with any of those incidents, and we did make a couple of rescues. The other thing the executive did mention that I do want to note that at this time, our USAR team, and actually I just took a call from our task force leader, is in New York City. They were deployed to New Jersey. From New Jersey, they were activated by FEMA to go into New York City. They are in the Rockaway subdivision. They are currently operating a search and rescue mission. We probably assume they will be there for several days, helping search with other FEMA assets as well as New York City Fire Department. A lot of that coastal area, or that area right there, which was inundated, unfortunately, with heavy floods as well as wind damage. So there may be a number of casualties, nothing to report at this time. And lastly, just to echo what Chief Manger just said, again, the leaning forward meant that a lot of people, both career and volunteer in fire and rescue, had to give up being at home. They did make preparations, but they've been on the job in fire rescue for 2 or 3 days already without too much break. So hats off to them. And again, to the public for staying home. That made a huge difference with respect to staying off the roads. And I guess the last thing, just to make sure the public knows, any pooled water that may be on the roadways, number one, slow down. And number two, if there's any standing water, try to go around it and not through it. Thank you.
Darren Popkin, I'm the sheriff here in Montgomery County. As these natural disasters tend to be very challenging, especially for the emergency operations people, we certainly fared very well. The planning certainly started several days before this actual event, and fortunately we did have time to provide for a lot of that pre-planning. Now, the disaster itself didn't come too hard here in Montgomery County, but our thoughts and prayers go out to the remainder of the jurisdictions in Maryland, especially Ocean City, which really took the brunt of the storm here in Maryland, as well as our colleagues up in the Jersey Shore and into New York City. Fortunately, the courts system in Montgomery County and throughout the entire state were closed over the last several days, which provided the opportunity to deploy about 50 sheriff's deputies throughout the county. The sheriff's office is responsible for the security of the shelters opening up here in Montgomery County, and I am pleased to say that we had no issues whatsoever. One of the shelters is now closed, and the other two, as was said, will be closing sometime early this afternoon. The deputies did a tremendous job working in partnership with all the county operations, especially with fire and police being up here at the EOC as well as the public safety headquarters. We really want to thank the hardworking men and women of public safety. Really, without them and leaving their homes and leaving their families, even though they did not know what to expect when they left their homes really 48 hours ago, the tremendous thanks goes out to them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff. My name is Tony Alexio, Emergency Management and Homeland Security. My staff has been tracking the storm since it began looking like it might come our direction about a week ago or so. We worked tirelessly throughout this past week, tracking and planning, preparing for what could have been a pretty bad scenario. We opened the Operations Center late Sunday evening, and my staff and I have been here ever since, working alongside other departments tirelessly trying to help the county get through the situation. We pulled a great deal of resources both in the county, from the state. We had some National Guard assets assisting police and fire. Overall, the operation went very well, and as Mr. Leggett said, we'll be demobilizing operations here at the Operations Center at 5 p.m. That doesn't mean we stop working. There'll still be phone calls and other connections meanwhile until things get completely settled up over the next day or so. Like Mr. Leggett said, shelters will be shutting down at 5 p.m. today. If any citizen of the county requires assistance with shelter, they're instructed to call the Crisis Center. Number for that is 240-777-4000. Thank you.
Just a brief note on our roads, Al.
Mr. Leggett. Al Rushdie, I'm Deputy Director for Montgomery County Department of Transportation. As County Executive indicated, we fare well. However, we were prepared. We had done a lot of planning. We were expecting a lot worse than what we saw. Our crews are out there right now and opening roads and working with Pepco, getting those trees with wires out of the way, and so we can get our people to be able to go where they need to go. Our operation will continue around the clock until we get all the roads open, and then we go into a cleanup operation, and hopefully we'll have this behind us fairly soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. As indicated before, we've unfortunately had a great deal of experience with these storms. We have been hit over the last few years with every kind of storm, weather-related, as you could think of. We've even had an earthquake here in Montgomery County. Storms of ice, rain, hurricanes, wind, you name it. And as a result of that, we've gathered a great deal of experience of how to respond to these things. Much of this operation that you've seen and the people that you see here come under the operation of our Chief Administrative Officer, Tim Feinstein, and he's done an outstanding job of putting together a team, getting advance notice out, preparing this county in a way that we are now able to respond to the challenges we face. We are fortunate, and unfortunately there are other parts of the region that did not fare quite as well. But I can look at this and say that we were well prepared, and I think that we responded in adequate kind. At this point in time, I'll stop, and if there are any questions, we'll be glad to answer them. Yes, and then here.
I have a clarification question for you on the ride-on service and for the chief on whether those two guys who were posing as water department employees were caught.
Let's take the chief first, Chief.
No, they've not been caught. We actually have a description of the vehicle and a description of a total of 4 occupants of that vehicle, because on the case where the neighbor intervened, the neighbor actually tried to get close to the vehicle and ended up having to jump out of the way of the vehicle. So we've got a decent description, and we've got detectives working on the case, but we've not made an arrest yet.
And how many occasions did this happen, and in what specific jurisdiction?
There were two cases. They both occurred Friday midday. One about 11:30, the other one at noon. So one was in Bethesda and one was in Chevy Chase.
There's another question you had related to transit. I'm sorry.
You mentioned ride-on. I caught the tail end of you're saying ride-on transit service. Is that going to resume today?
Yes, we'll resume today with a Sunday schedule starting at 4 p.m. Right. Regular tomorrow. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Where is Chris Foster in all this?
Chris Voss was caught out of town, unfortunately, in an unforeseen, well, he was out of town and he couldn't make it back, so.
So you've been handling the majority of this?
Chris has actually been on the phone and in contact with all of us lockstep. He has been part of every conference call, every meeting we've had over the phone. While he's not here, he has been here, and he's been working alongside with all of us.
Mr. Leggett, how do you think that he's done taking charge of this operation?
I think he's done an excellent job. I think the entire staff, you start again, as I indicated before, the Chief Administrative Officer and the entire team that you see. And when you look at that team and the experience that we've had, I think it shows well for the county in terms of the experience and the people that we have leading this operation.
Thank you.
You say you've got roads flooded. What general area of the county at this point?
You have the list of the roads, so, Al?
We're trying to get the word out. We're not dry.
We have a list of roads.
If you don't mind going. I've looked at the list. I'm just wondering if you had to give people recommendations, what would you recommend to people who are on the road?
Well, our recommendation is to avoid. I mean, as the chief manager and county executive mentioned, you want to don't go fast, and also if you can avoid those roads. If they are flooded, there are barricades, and the road is that portion of the road is closed. So we ask you to avoid those segments.
Are they typical roads, or are they unusual circumstances that we're dealing with?
Most of them are the roadways that the residents are probably familiar with that typically flood in the low-lying areas. We can't even say that it's, avoid, this section of the county, that section of the county, because we've got, some from, neighborhoods that close to the Potomac River all the way to up county, and probably the worst area of the county is typically Colesville Road right there at Burnt Mills, which, as the county executive mentioned, just opened up moments ago. So it's really all over the county, but it is typically the areas that we do see flooding when we have a lot of rain.
Are you concerned at all about the Potomac River? I mean, there's been a lot of snow up in West Virginia, and there's been a lot of rain. Do we need to worry about a delayed flooding?
You have to keep an eye on it because, lot of the water that comes into Montgomery County comes from the state of West Virginia, and we're going to keep an eye on that for the next couple of days.
Can you talk a little more about the team that's up in New York City? More details about who they are, what they do. I know you use an acronym for them.
Sure. Our USAR team is really a FEMA response team. Us in Fairfax County in this region we're paired together right now and on the mission that went to New Jersey, and are together but doing separate missions in New York City right now. Maryland Task Force 1 is the name of the team. It is a FEMA team. It's a federal asset. Tim Firestein, the county executive, approved the team to be federalized upon the request of the federal government and through the state this past week, when the federal government and the states leaned forward too, just like the county did. So those assets were deployed, as I said, through the last couple of days, and then obviously they're on this mission, which involves directly search and rescue. Again, there could be a number of casualties that don't have a report of that yet, but there is widespread devastation in the area in which they are in right now.
How many men and women are on the team, and what kind of equipment did they bring in?
It is an 80-person team, and we actually have assets still here in the county to support a second team. They have everything that ranges from search and rescue equipment and training and certification, as well as medical training certification. We have doctors, we have dog handlers, and search dogs. It's a fully comprehensive, what we call a Type 1 FEMA response team. And as I said, about 80 men and women that are on the team with various certifications and skills.
Could you go back to the evacuations and the water rescue? Where did they happen and how many were they?
The evacuations I can't necessarily speak to, but I will speak to the water rescues. The water rescues were throughout widespread county, all through the region. You know, there's some typical areas that flood very quickly, but because of the amount of rain we got, the amount of water that was not able to be shed, we ran a few more than normal, if you will, during this type of rain event because of the amount of rain we got. So all of them were successful. As I said before, fire rescue, police, as well as sheriffs responded. And one of the difficulties that we did encounter were a lot of trees down blocking roadways to get to some of those water rescues. But again, we were able to navigate through that. A lot of that also was with some of the life safety task forces that we put together with PEPCO, police, sheriff, fire rescue, as well as DOT with a snowplow on it, so that we could push trees out of the way to open up a roadway to be able to get to any of these types of incidents.
And about how many water rescues?
I know of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that we responded to, and I have to verify that number though.
And could someone approximate number of evacuations of the county?
The number of people, you mean?
Tony, did we do any vacs that you know of?
No,
I'm not aware of any.
No, we did not do any evacs at all. As a matter of fact, some people self-evacuate to shelters as they rode out the storm or had a couple power outages, but there was nothing large scale.
And just to make sure on the car crash, I know yesterday it was sort of it was possibly related to the storm, but you guys didn't want to say directly related. It sounds like you still are sort of possibly, or
We suspect that it was the water in the roadway that caused the vehicle to hydroplane. That's what we suspect at this point.
Do you have any kind of estimate of the number of trees that went into houses or structures that caused significant damage?
Yeah, I think there were, on emergency calls, there were 26. Now, keep in mind, there may have been some that did not come as a result of emergency calls, but there are 26 emergency calls of trees actually hitting homes and businesses.
You said you thanked PEPCO. Did they do well or did they get lucky?
Well, let's go back and look at the things that I complained about in the past with PEPCO. One were the challenges with their infrastructure, which is an ongoing challenge that they would have to deal with over a considerable period of time. The second one was communication. I think their communication was much better. And the third one, the one that I most specifically honed in on, was I thought that their failure in the past to bring in the outside assistance in a timely fashion. Well, if you looked around as of last Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they had brought in a considerable amount of assets in. Now, from their perspective, they've indicated very clearly that as compared to the storm this past summer where they had actually no warning, they had sufficient warning this time. Therefore, they were able to bring in those assets early enough. So I want to give them credit for what credit is due. They brought those assets in. The communication was much better. If this is luck, I want more luck like this each and every time we have a storm.
One of the things that a lot of folks in the newsroom have been talking about is, did the derecho take out all of our trees for us? And then did people clean up their yards and take down trees, and that's why we don't have the damage? Or was this storm just not severe enough? Why didn't we have even worse than what we had?
Well, A, the storm did not hit us as hard as we originally anticipated. Secondly, the earlier storm hit during the summer, where you have the head and laden of trees with all of the branches on and all of the foliage on. At this point in time, a large amount of that had actually hit the ground. Therefore, the trees were not as heavy, and we did not have as widespread damage as before. So I think that, yeah, there may have been some trees lost, but I think the problem, or at least the asset to us this time, was the fact that it's fall as opposed to summer and the condition of the trees at the point in time.
Do you think the derecho did some of the cleaning up for us?
Maybe so. That's hard to guess, but I do know for sure that the trees were not as heavy because, again, you did not have snow or ice on them, and you did not have as much foliage on the trees.
You heard from the state when they're going to put the speed limits back up on the major roads?
No, we have not heard. And I'll be in contact again. I was at a conversation with the governor about 9:30 this morning, and we'll have a further update later on today.
Do we have an estimate of when the roads will be cleared?
We are working at, diligently on getting all the roads open. In terms of course, where the tree is involved with the wire, we are at the mercy of PEPCO, and they are working with us on that. So I couldn't give you any time frame, but based on what I see, I would say we'll, the next couple of days at the most.
And you mentioned PEPCO. Is PEPCO here?
Beg pardon?
Is PEPCO here in the EOC, or is there...
Yes, there is a representative in the EOC.
Do you think we're going to have any problems with flooding? High tide is expected tonight. How are you monitoring the dams?
Well, we continue to monitor, and we can't be certain, given the amount of rain that has occurred over the last couple of days, that some of the roads that are now clear may flood because of the high tide and some other things that may happen as a result of that. But we will continue to monitor that and to make certain that we clear them as quickly as possible. Our crews are out there. We think that the problem is manageable. There are some challenges where there are challenges indicated earlier about the wires being in place, but I think that we're going to continue to reduce that number. If you look at that number from early this morning, it has gone down even further. And as we speak, we continue to operate to reduce the number even further.
Can you say if you expect evacuations around Lake Needwood as the water rises, or it's just too early?
I think it's a little too early. We do not anticipate that, but we're prepared in any event. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned Route 29 is now open. Are there any other roads previously closed that are now open that you can update us on?
We have the list. We'll try to provide you with the list, and we have the list that's being updated as we speak, and we'll try to get that to you as quickly as possible.
You mentioned early voting, 8 to 6. I heard the governor say today 8 to 9.
No, I said it had been extended from 8 to 6 to 8 to 9. And we've also added additional day, which is Friday. Okay, no further questions. Thank you very much for coming out.